Good evening and welcome to the City of Oak Park Heights Parks Commission meeting. Today is Monday, May 15th, 2023, and I hereby call this meeting to order. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, I am going to ask again for my colleague here, George Hepner, to take over for me while I'm still under the weather.
Okay, could I get a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
So moved.
Okay, and a second.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Approval of our minutes from the April 17th meeting. Do we need time to look those over, or are we good?
Through them already.
And whenever anybody's ready, I'll take a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes from April 17th meeting.
All right?
Second
And a
that.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. On to department and commission liaison reports. Start with Arborist, Lisa.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I've just got a couple quick items. The prairies were mowed at Valley View and Swagger within the last 2 weeks for the annual spring mow. And then Save a Tree was in and did the spring ash tree removals as part of the Minnesota DNR 2022 preparing for EAB grants. They're a little short on crews right now, so the stump grindings are a little bit behind, but hopefully here within the next couple of weeks they will get those done. And I haven't had a chance yet to start putting together the planting list, but I'm hoping to possibly still do a spring, early summer planting. Otherwise, we'll probably be looking at a fall planting. So that's all I have.
All righty. Thank you. Public Works, Andy?
Yes, just a few quick operational things, and by the way, not for lack of effort, we have been extremely busy this spring, so everyone's kind of running around with their head cut off. But a couple of items is the park shelters, we're trying to get those open. We should have them open maybe the end of this week, probably more than likely earlier next week, but definitely by Memorial Day. That's our dead cutoff, so the shelters will be open soon. We have been experiencing a little bit of vandalism at Brecky Park. The OPH PD is aware of that, and they've been patrolling a little bit extra, so we thank them for that. And then 58th Street trail damage. I bet you've seen that. So we are working on getting that repaired. We're going to have those areas saw cut and then spot patched, so you're aware of that. Otherwise, we've got a whole bunch of things on our list that we're still working on, and the Swagger Park playground replacement is on schedule. Equipment may be delivered as early as next week. We're going to meet with St. Croix Rec on site next Tuesday. He's going to set some elevations for us to remove the sand, so it's appropriate with the bottom of the equipment, and we'll move forward on that.
So what's the goal then for Swagger Park? This should be in place by?
July 4th, let's say that.
I have one thing I was going to mention. I talked to Jen. I called her about it. We border on Valley View Park.
Yes.
On the west side of it, and we have one of those lights that's controlled by motion, and when it goes off down on our lower level in the back, go up. Always look out a window and see how many deer are eating my hostas and things like that. And it was a full-size black bear in our backyard.
Really?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
And he was not at all afraid of the human element there, because he was up on our covered patio, because it's a walkout, so he was right up by the window. And then we watched him walk over to the neighbors and search their patio. So he's obviously somewhat used to people perhaps leaving goodies out,
Yeah,
you know.
Well-
So I thought you would want to know, because I know we have signs.
we do have signs. There was a black bear got stuck in a storm sewer, I think it was a year ago, maybe?
Yeah, but it was a young one, wasn't it?
Yes.
Sort of a cub. This guy was at least 300 pounds,
Really?
just lumbering along, and he disappeared into the big ravine
Okay.
down there at the park. So I think we should get the signs out.
Yeah.
Haven't seen or heard anything more, but I've been watching in the neighborhood watch and stuff, and they have a whole family with 2 new cubs up at Ferry Falls, and in that area where 96 comes into 95.
Oh, okay.
And they're all saying, be very careful, don't leave food out, and if you see any sign, do call the DNR, but also your local
Yeah.
government is,
Yeah.
because we all have signs to at least warn people about this thing.
You know, we did have those, I think it was Jennifer actually that called out to have those signs specially made. Are you aware of, do we have any extras of those, or?
I did check with Eric, and he's out for a couple of days, so I'll just check again with him when he gets back on Wednesday.
Yeah, it might not be a bad idea to post those right in the parks, not
Yeah.
just along the trail.
Yeah.
Thank you for that information.
Sure. It was sort of a shock, because he was not at all. We're used to the turkeys
Yeah.
coming right up and scolding us if we dare to go out there and things like that. And we have fox come, and I got 3 deer who are eating every lilac bud off. But that's just the pleasure of being in our location. The bear sort of threw me.
Speaking of signs, those kind of trail map signs that we have around, I know there's one up on the Beach Road Bridge and one down by Oak Park Crossing. They're really getting faded
Mention
and
that.
difficult to
Good.
read.
Yeah.
I don't know if you just rerun them to get fresh
We could definitely do
maps
that.
in there. Yeah, they just, I think they're hard to read.
You know, someone did report too, I think we had an update, and I think there was still an old map in one of them, which we failed to replace, so that's a good reminder, thank you. Well, I'll make sure that those are all replaced.
Good, thank you.
Maybe we can add a couple of the leash law, dog on leash signs at the entry to Crossings Park, you know, either at the, at Beach and at Pellerin 56, because when you ride your bike to come down the hill, when you come down and you start coming downhill and all, there's people come in, their dogs are running all the time back there.
Okay.
So that's a nice wild area, but
It is.
it's just
But
tough when you're on your bike and they come bounding out of the brush.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, and they're supposed to be picking up after the dogs, and that's not
Yeah.
happening if the dogs aren't staying by. Who's
They're on
ever
the
walking
trail.
them?
They leave it on the trail too. You drive around that.
I know.
That's life.
All right, we good?
That's all, yep, I'm good.
Are we going to have a walk around this spring?
We talked about that last meeting. We'll maybe get there by the end of the meeting today.
Okay. Thank you.
Commission report, Chuck, you have anything?
Yeah, the walkthrough is one of my questions too, so. Just a note, Party in the Park is June 8th at Brecky Park, starting at 4:30.
June 8th,
Always a fun time.
Starting at,
4:30,
Brecky,
Brecky Park.
down below, right? Like last year?
That's all over the place, yeah, but pretty much down below. And just an FYI for people that we do have the open dump for the city on May 20th, this coming Saturday.
Right.
That starts at what time?
7:30 a.m. until noon this year.
7:30 till noon. It's a little, yeah. And only other thing I had
That
was
is a
just
very appreciated service.
Very much so.
was a question from one of our residents down by Culver Park, is the bank, is that still going to be redone? The bank going down to the Repeller?
I don't know what you're talking about. What?
When are we going to read?
Oh,
plant that bank?
the garden, the Culver Park Garden,
Yeah.
yes, that's on the list for this year.
Okay,
Yep.
she asked and
Yep.
I said I would check.
Yeah, the plan was to, we're gonna remove all the old debris, and there still are some flowers in there.
Yep.
But the plan is to plant wild grass or
Yep.
flowers or somewhat of a prairie that we don't have to mow. So, yeah,
Cool.
we will be doing that this year.
Okay, Alrighty.
No, we're putting a picture in there or something on.
It was a plaque of some
A
sort.
plaque,
I
yeah,
don't think we
that-
ever decided on
Oh.
the exact plaque, but we could figure that out.
Okay.
It was a dedication to Pam Patrick and all of her years of service.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
I think we're good. Summer Park Program Coordinator visiting tonight. Come on, Annie.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I am the Summer Parks Coordinator for Oak Park Heights Summer Events. I consider my
Can you pull the
objective
mic down just a little there? Thanks.
to get families of Oak Park Heights into the parks, hanging out, having fun. I, again, am bringing in some new items on the agenda this year. One of them being Maker Space will be held at Brecky Park. This will be an objective to use recycled items and just have fun with it. Also, we are partnering with Stillwater ECFE, and we're going to be over at Valley View Park holding events for families. We're going to make it fun. It's going on a bear hunt, and it's about the beloved book, Going on a Bear Hunt. And also, Tuesday Arts in the Park is always our most famous event. That is, I'm so excited for this year, bringing in a lot of local businesses. Is, for example, the first one is Carrie's Art and Paint. She'll be providing mugs for the children, and then she's actually bringing them back to her studio to fire for the children, just in time for Father's Day. And some other ones are that are local are Power Up with Health Partners, and Two Bees and a Bud, which they are a flower garden in the area. And they're going to be providing us flowers, and the children are going to make vases. I'm really excited for all these new events this year. Also, we have the fairies in the park that we are going to have be going for 2 weeks this year, rather than the 1 week,
That's cool.
because it was wanted for 2 weeks, a little longer. I heard from the community that they thought the 1 week was too short. So we'll be doing that in the same area as well. And I believe that the fairy houses are being close to gone.
4 left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for that as well. And we have some people we're working with from the high school as well that will help us with that. I wish I had my flyer.
They have your flyers.
Yay!
Yeah.
What else?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we're also bringing in some science and STEM events for the children. This is new from this year, and they're providing all the, every child will be provided with a little science kit, and then they're going to be doing it with them, so I'm super excited about that as well. And bingo has always been asked to come back, so we'll be doing that as well. Does anyone have any questions?
So where are you advertising so people learn about this?
Sure, we are on Facebook, of course, Oak Park Heights, the website, and then I always do printouts of the flyer and bring them around Oak Park Heights.
We also had it in our most recent newsletter, which went out the first week in April, I think.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Are we do we encourage kids from Afton and kids from Stillwater, or do we not advertise that way? I guess I don't know.
I mean, we usually try to focus on advertising for Oak Park Heights residents, but we don't.
However, everyone is welcome.
Yeah, everyone is
Yeah.
welcome.
Well, I'm thinking, like you mentioned, ECFE, you'd think if you dropped a stack there, as parents go through there with their kids, you know, they might see them if they aren't Oak Park Heights residents, but if we don't want,
No, that's, yeah, no.
Those other
Equal
rebels.
opportunity, Valley kids.
yeah.
I guess instead of it'd be nice if you just get a QR code, put it on the flyer, and they can just, they can get.
We did use QR codes last year. What I
Say
found
something
was
to
that the
stack
community is
flyers.
still unfamiliar with them.
Okay. Let's just say something, stack
I
a bunch of
love the
flyers.
idea. That's actually how I really wanted to work out getting more statistics and being able to provide you with that information. However, it just wasn't, people just didn't know, unfortunately, how to use it. Or
My
didn't.
grandparents doing that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
They're getting there. You're getting there. We'll have a training, well, that'll be one of the events in the park. QR codes in the park.
Oh, actually, one of my questions, if we get the parking in time, it would be fun to hold like a open house.
Yeah,
That would be.
I think
Let me
that's a
know.
great idea. I
Yeah.
think that's fun.
That'd be a fun
We'll keep
event.
you updated on when it's open.
Yes, please.
Well, your flyers are just so attractive.
Oh,
and
thank
so
you.
Cool. Just love them.
The other one that was kind of shrunken because it's made to be a 7-Eleven poster, so that's why it's a little shrunken. But when we print the posters, it will look nicely and be able to be
Yeah.
read for the residents.
No, I just think you're doing a wonderful job, Jim.
Thank you. This
Okay.
is my passion. I actually really love this job a lot. So
Good.
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Annie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Visitors' public comments. Trailmaster stuff, are you here? Okay. Public hearing, we don't have that. Old business, we don't have that. Our new business is the Middle St. Croix Valley Regional Trail Master Plan. Welcome, if you would introduce yourself, and we'll
Find the right page.
find the right page.
Follow along with you. So give us some guidance if you can.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Connor Schaefer. I'm a senior planner at Washington County, and today I'm here to present a project that we've been working on for just over 12 months now called the Middle St. Croix Valley Regional Trail Master Plan. Today, I'm before you to kind of give an update on the project and talk about the process, and then I will actually review the specific route that kind of came out of the process. The goal for today is to get you folks kind of up to speed on it, and then hopefully receive a recommendation or some type of feedback so that we can pursue a resolution of support from the City Council at a future date.
Yeah. And give us a second to get these.
Yeah,
over
absolutely. And those maps, absolutely. Those maps we'll walk through kind of step by step at a later part in the presentation. Interesting for folks like you, the commissioners. And I'll talk about some of the route alternatives that we assessed during the process, and then actually walk through that recommendation that came out of that process. And I'll finish with next steps. Next slide, please. All right, well, the first term that you hear kind of in the introduction here is the regional trail. And this is a very specific term that maybe not everybody's familiar with. It's different than a state trail. It's also different than like a city trail or even a county trail. So regional trails serve a regional audience, right? Not just the immediate neighborhoods, not just the county, but even folks in Wisconsin and other counties. Regional draws in that way. The county views these as the tree trunks for our regional trail system. So just like how the county highway system is kind of that feeder arterial connector for the roads, we see that as kind of the equivalent here for our trails. So this is the tree trunk that other local trail systems can kind of branch into and out of. So we're establishing a tree trunk with these regional trails. These trails encourage different modes and different users. It's not just for bikers, it's not just for walkers, it's for both, and even everybody in between, dog walkers, strollers, folks with wheelchairs, that kind of thing. And by that we mean we give wide enough space for bidirectional traffic. Typically 10 feet wide is the standard that we like to use. We also include more gentle grades where possible to make it a little bit more accessible for folks. And another key piece is that we try to provide a different experience further away from traffic where possible. So on the slide here, you actually see an existing regional trail in Washington County in the city of Hugo. You can see that it's a nice flat surface, really wide. You actually see multiple users using it at the same time. You also see signage right there. We typically have good signage for these types of trails. Then you also see this green buffer that separates the trail user from the road traffic that you can kind of see at the back of the picture. So that's a good kind of idea of what kind of trail system we're looking to build with this master plan. That's what it would look like when it's finally built. Or that's what we're shooting for, at least. Next slide, please. So how do we get to the point where we have regional trails in Washington County? Well, it starts with this plan. It starts with the master plan. It's kind of step zero in a long process that maybe takes decades to really come to fruition. These master plans are documents, and they provide guidance on where the alignment of the trail where it will go. It also talk about trail improvements, trail uses, and facilities along that corridor. And we'll also talk about resource management. So let's say trail goes through a natural area, is there opportunities that we can manage resources within that corridor in a way that has benefits for water quality, wildlife, recreational experience, things like that. So that's not the case for a lot of parts of the trail, but where there is possible, we do look at that. Now, why are these master plans important? Well, the first is that first big reason is that it becomes eligible for additional funding sources, and that includes state sources, Metropolitan Council sources. We use those funds to acquire any right-of-way that may be needed, to actually develop the trail and construct it, and we also get a little tiny reimbursement for some of the maintenance work that we do for it. Just as important as it being eligible for funding, it also gives us a chance to interact with citizens and our local agencies, our cities, and talk to them about our long-range plans for trails in Washington County. And in those conversations, we can really set expectations so that the cities can make decisions with their land use and trails and other infrastructure projects with what the county has planned in mind as well. And that really provides a good kind of cohesion between the two agencies on how trails will develop in this part of the county. Next slide, please. So we start by establishing a search corridor. This master plan, the Middle St. Croix Valley Regional Trail Search Corridor, it starts at the Boom site in the very north, and the south terminus is downtown Afton. And within there are some existing trails, but there are also significant trail gaps between there. I just want to highlight there are 11 different St. Croix Valley towns and cities as part of this project. And as you can imagine, it's been really interesting to try to get everybody growing in the same direction, but it's been really fun. It's been great to talk to folks across the valley about one project. It's not often that we get a chance to do that. Usually we're only working with like a few. So that's been really great. Next slide, please. Here's what a typical master plan process looks like from a timeline perspective. We start with visioning and site analysis. We move into a lot of engagement and data collection, which we did last summer. We did quite a bit of work on route development and plan drafting, and then as we're moving into kind of spring into summer here, we provide updates for folks and start drafting the actual document for the approval process. Next slide. Before the county draws any lines on any maps or even looks out maps, we establish some key priorities and wants from the local agencies and the public, and we establish project goals based on that information. So these are themes that came up and priorities that came up throughout the whole process that really set the stage for the decisions we would make further down in the project process, including route evaluation. So the first project goal was safety, accessibility, and comfort. Second was connectivity. Third was natural resources, then equity, and then finally implementation. So I'll refer back to these as we get into the route evaluation phase in just a few slides. Next slide.
What, can I just, equity? Can you expand what that means?
Sure. The explanation that we have in our kind of goal statement here is prioritizing facility alignment and design that is inclusive of historically underrepresented populations. So statistics show across the entire metro, there are certain people more likely to use regional trails than others based on class or income, race, and education, age, and ability and disability as well. So we want to create a trail that helps reduce those barriers for people who are not using these trails right now. Some folks feel very welcome and really love these trails and know them and know how to use them. Other folks, it's not very comfortable, it's something new. So how can we plan a trail that helps shrink that or minimize those barriers?
What do you do different?
Great question. So there are a couple things. One is the location of the trail, right? If it's closer to neighborhoods that don't have existing access to trails, that's really important because then it's easier for you to hop on your bike and see it. If you don't live by it, it's hard to know about it or hard to access, right? Secondly is some of the things that I talked about earlier, that those wide trails that make it a lot easier, the gradual grades. So if you are in a wheelchair, for some trails they're just not possible if you're in a wheelchair. If you have a gentle grade, that reduces that barrier significantly. And the third, which we are really excited about, is we continue to work on programming for these trails, which is why that presentation was really great. We host events on these trails to bring people who aren't familiar with the trail out on them. So that piece kind of comes after we get the trail built, right? But we can tee that up with master plans like this.
How much funding is applied for that? How much of the funding, what percent, I guess? I just got my bike, I just rode 20 miles, and I just came off the loop trail, well, half the loop, because you can't come down the bridge, and I did greet some people in Spanish today, but I've greeted people in Spanish and Swahili, and they managed to find the trail. So I just, because we're talking about cost sharing, I read that in the further on, and just want to see how much money we're spending on what to get a good trail.
Sure. Yeah, park programming is completely what the Washington County does. So we program our parks and trail spaces through our own funding. So there's no cost share expected for park programming.
Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Next slide, please. I think we're on engagement events. Perfect. So, like I said, last summer we were out in the community a lot. We hosted a bunch of events, kind of pop-up events, and then also more formal open house events as well. You can see kind of a long list. I won't go through each of them. I do want to point out that we did an elected officials summit with representatives from 11 cities and towns, and there was a council member from Oak Park Heights that was able to attend that, which was a great way to kind of set the scene for the project, which was helpful. I do also want to point out that throughout this whole process, the county's been engaging with the city staff and part of a technical advisory committee that had folks from different members of staff for all the agencies along the corridor, but also some of the more regional agencies like the DNR, MnDOT, Metropolitan Council, and watershed districts and folks like that. And we were meeting with them regularly through this. So this has been really informed by those conversations. In addition to just the local agencies, we also met with some of the other kind of important stakeholders, people like the Lower St. Croix Valley Alliance, Bellwin Conservancy, which we highlight a little bit later here, Anderson Windows, which I'm sure folks in this area are familiar, Xcel Energy as well. So we were meeting with folks, and feedback we gathered from those informations really led informed a lot of the regional trail master plan recommendations. Next slide, please. So we did do a public survey for this that we received over 1,100 responses. You can see some of the highlights from that, but what I really want to talk about or just mention here on this slide is the continuum exercise. So as part of our public engagement, we asked folks in person or at the elected official meeting, but also on this public survey, about their preferences with trails. We know that every trail can't be everything to everyone. That's something that we have to say a lot. And you have trade-offs involved with processes like this. So these are like the trade-offs, the decisions we were asking the public where they lie on the kind of spectrum of it. So on one side, you have a destination indirect trail. Now on the other side, you have a more connector direct trail that trying to get you A to B in the quickest way possible. For this option, you're kind of meandering. Maybe you're going through more of the scenic route, for example. They both have pluses and minuses. They both have trade-offs. Or maybe you're somewhere in the middle, or maybe you lean a little bit one way, lean a little bit other. So we asked folks where they kind of lie on that spectrum. You aggregate all the responses that we got. It showed a slight preference for that destination indirect trail type of route. So that's something that we took into account as we moved forward in the project. The second question we asked is, on one side, people like utilizing new trails, like establishing where a new trail could go, or do they like the idea of designating existing trails that already exist within the corridor? And there's really no preference there. For the most part, we got it like right down the middle for most responses. Next thing we asked folks is, do they prefer the river views or the upland rural views? And this corridor is special because it has both, right? But sometimes you can get one and not the other. So we asked folks kind of where they lied on that spectrum, and they did demonstrate a preference for river views. And then last, we have natural areas and downtown connections. So this corridor, some of the more downtown areas, you don't quite have as many of the scenic park open spaces that you might have in other parts of the corridor. And really, when we asked that question, people demonstrated a slight preference for natural areas over those downtown connections. Now, that didn't mean that we need to ignore all the things that people didn't prefer, because there wasn't such a really strong preference, but it did inform our route as we went forward in the process. Next slide, please. So we heard thousands of comments, and if we had to boil them down into key bullet points, these are the things that maybe rose to the top that we heard the most often. First is that this trail should highlight local parks and destinations. Second, to make connections between communities. Third, to explore loop opportunities. I think a lot of people had the St. Croix loop in mind when we talked to them about this trail project. Next, provide views of the river where feasible. We talk about fostering stewardship of area natural resources being important. And then a wide trail to accommodate a range of users. And finally, how important clear way finding and high quality trail amenities are. So those are some of the things that really rose to the top when we talked to folks at all those open houses and pop-up events.
Like, what, the listing, like the amenities, what they were looking for?
Yeah, so signage that makes it easy to know where there might be places where I could go use the bathroom, or a public library, or a place I can go get ice cream, things like that. That would, and then also things like places to sit. So we have benches, trash and waste receptacles, recycling receptacles, also was something people mentioned. So that's kind of an all-encompassing word to include like the different features that you might have along a trail to make it a little bit easier.
Any additional like parking, you know, or
Trailheads.
yeah, there we go. Thank you.
That would fall under that as well. Yep, absolutely. Yep. All right. So this next section, I'll be talking about some implementation considerations. First, I'll review the county's policy. That includes our cost share policy as set by our county commissioners. This policy applies to transportation projects, including the implementation of regional trails in Washington County. It reads like this. It's the initial trail implementation. The county will cover 50% of that. Once it is built, or if it is already built, the county assumes 100% responsibility for future repaving and replacement. And next, we talk about operation and maintenance, just some expectations.
So of the 50% of the county, so is that all the money that's coming from all sources is included in that, or is that on top of the 50% from the county?
So if the county were able to receive a grant, let's say, for a project like this, we would reduce the county and the city share at the same level.
Okay.
Yeah, good clarification.
Then are the 11 communities then going to split equally, or how's that going to be?
Good question. It would depend on the segment of trail we're applying for, if that makes
Say
sense.
that again.
It would depend on where in the corridor we're applying for. Let's say we're applying for the grant for a 1 mile section in Oak Park Heights, then that would apply to the Oak Park Heights and Washington County share.
Well, I was thinking more like the remainder of the other 50% of the cost. If the county's got 50%, then there's 11 communities that are sharing the other 50%.
Yeah. Similarly, it would be tied to the segment
Okay.
that the city is, that the segment on which the trail is in.
Almost like running miles or running
Yeah.
Yeah.
yards.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
George will be able to take better.
So for operation maintenance, just reviewing the county's policy on that, the county on regional trails will take responsibility for the waste reciprocal pickups, the trailheads, kiosks, and graffiti, and seasonal mowing. I will call out some of the trailheads and kiosks. We like to identify existing where possible along the corridors, and so we wouldn't take those, for example, like the DNR trailheads, for example. They'll continue to manage those and use those. We'll just designate them as, you know, a trailhead for this trail if you'd like, but we wouldn't like take that property from DNR or anything like that. So it'd be more about like county-owned trailheads. And then seasonal mowing. And local agencies, if they choose to, they can do winter plowing. That's optional. And then also do minor maintenance. We work with cities to provide access to trails to do that. One example is to do more frequent mowing. So the county will do it 2-3 times a year, where some cities choose to do it, you know, once a month or something like that.
On any of the trails that are, the existing trails that are assumed into the overall plan, would they be repaved to be consistent at the start, so they're all the same shape all the way through?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the idea is that when existing segments are up for, or like they've reached their usable life, at that point then we would go in and try to build that trail to the regional standard.
Okay.
So we would wait until it kind of uses its full life in order to do that project. All right, next slide here. So we do understand when we talk to folks about these projects, you know, it sounds great, but we also understand that these projects come with costs. We take into account cost and implementation within our evaluation. We take that pretty seriously, so all folks kind of go into eyes wide open. The question we ask ourselves is, how can we create a master plan that puts us and the local agencies in the best position to fund this in the future? So we have evaluation metrics that went into this process around potential capital cost or estimated capital cost, estimated operation and maintenance costs, and then maybe most importantly, compatibility with funding sources. In addition to this is also a strategy the county employs, is that we look at additional grant opportunities for corridors that are designated as regional trail. Like I said, there are additional sources that are not available for corridors that are not on the regional system that are if you are designated on it.
Just a sec, you said capital, operation, and maintenance, and your third one was,
Compatibility with funding sources.
and can you explain that?
Sure, yeah. Some trails, if you are on the regional trail system, you are eligible for funding sources that if you're not, you would not be able to even submit a grant. You wouldn't even be considered for a grant. And some corridors are also designated on transportation networks, not just recreational networks, transportation networks. And that opens it up for transportation funds, specifically at the federal level. Those are important too. So we would like to prioritize corridors that are within as many designations as possible so that we have more funding sources to draw from in order to implement them. So another, something that we work with local agencies on is, and we've worked with landowners on this as well, is that we do work on land donations if there's right-of-way needed. We also try to encourage development agreements that include the planning for these regional trails. A lot of these regional trails in other parts of the county get built with development as it comes through a certain area of the county. So that's a great way to get these built without cost to the city or the county. And then I think all this highlights just how important these master plans are. Really, once again, the importance of these plans is to put us in best position to look at those funding situations and opportunities so that we're ready to go, we're ready to pounce when we do see a grant opportunity that's available or a funding source that is a good match for this. This is just a smattering of ideas. I'm happy to take any other additional ideas that you have or continue to work with Oak Park Heights staff on other ideas that come up as well. Next slide. This is just demonstrating the list of grants that the county currently tracks. And quite frankly, this grows all the time with new infrastructure bills at the state level and federal level. But these are just a quick example of different trail grants that the county could pursue when we look at building trail projects.
Do you involve well, I guess in my area it'd be Housley or Josiah Hill would be the representative. Do you involve those people in this discussion? I mean, I guess, are they any help is what I want to ask.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So were the county to pursue a state bonding request, those who we'd work for to get included in the bonding bill, regional trail projects are eligible for that state money, but so are any trail project as well.
Sure.
But they do like to hear when they have a regional a designation that appeals to them more because they represent not just one community, right? Sure. Many communities. So that's an important, I think, consideration. The county has not pursued funding a project like this because we don't have a master plan yet. We need to have a route to show them, like they'd ask, where's this route going to go, things like that. So this would put us in position to make that request to our state legislators.
Okay. Where does Met Council stand in this?
Yeah, so they provide the framework and the requirements for master plans. And then it's the local agencies, the county job to go and do the work with the local agencies to establish the route and write the plan to those qualifications. And after the county board signs off on it, the Met Council does their review on it as well to make sure it reaches the standards and qualifications there. So it's my job to make sure that we create a plan that really measures up to that. And so that's like the framework that I work within. That helps just to make these regional networks kind of be as close as you can to talking to each other. So if you're in Anoka County, Washington County, or Dakota County, that these trails, they're not going to be seamless, but they connect with each other and making sure that it's a similar trail experience no matter which county you're in. All right, next slide. And you can just skip to the next one, thank you. So I did want to talk about the evaluation process that we went through because I think it really demonstrates a good example of how these projects really come to be. So there are two phases that we did, and in each step we talked with city and we did kind of meetings with city staff to review the decisions we were making. So for example, in that first phase, I like to call it the spaghetti at the wall phase. We just threw a bunch of lines on the map and just see what stuck. And we work closely with city staff to decide, okay, what needs to be pulled off for whatever reason. Oh, we know, we've already looked into a trail there, it wouldn't work for a right-of-way reason, or the environmental impacts here wouldn't make sense, or, MnDOT doesn't have a project there, different reasons to pull lines off, or maybe add lines, things like that. So that really got the low-hanging fruit pieces out of the way in that first phase, just through conversation with our local agencies. Now, the second phase was once we had a kind of a more narrowed list, we did a data-driven approach that took those 5 goals that I mentioned earlier, established performance measures to those, and graded out each segment and looked at which segments met the project goals and which ones did, but not to the level of other segments, and we let that guide our route alignment. Now, I do want to point out that that was just a guide. If you just took the highest scoring segments, it would not make any sense to any person who's ever ridden a bike or walked ever. It just wouldn't have lined up or been connected. So we did some, obviously, boots on the ground and made sure that it made sense from a navigational standpoint as well. But the data-driven approach really helped us get to a point where we could make some selections between the different route options at that point. The pictures you see here are just the examples of how we went through this at Oak Park Heights. All the lines you see on the map, it's kind of where we first started, and you can kind of see where the X's are about some of the low-hanging fruit that we kind of peeled off through conversations we had at the city level, the ones that go through the SN area. We had conversations with the DNR, and that wasn't something they were interested in pursuing, so that came off, for example. And we'll see kind of what routes came out of this process, but you can also see what are, everything we threw at the wall is kind of captured on these maps.
So the red X's become things that you considered and got rid of?
Yes. Yep. Thanks for that clarification. All right. So that brings us to 3 routes, Route A, B, and C. This kind of came out of that whole evaluation process. I'll briefly review these, and then we'll kind of show the route recommendation. This first route really centers on Trunk Highway 95. It starts at the boom site, follows 95 into the Browns Creek Trail. Browns Creek Trail turns into the St. Croix Crossing Loop Trail, and continues as you get on the other side or underneath 36, and kind of continues into downtown Bayport, for example. That's where we worked really closely with Bayport. Working with them, they knew, and they worked with MnDOT on this as part of an improvement project, that a trail does not really fit on 95 through that section of downtown. Too tight, right? So we looked at the block behind it as a different alternative. There were issues with that too. There were a lot of boulevard trees that a wide trail would impact. There's street parking that we would impact. But, it's possible. So we looked at it. We continued to look at it. Now, the real issue was when you get out of downtown Bayport, back onto 95, that's what this image here shows. For those who are familiar with that, you're driving, you've got a guardrail here, and on the other side of the guardrail, it's a steep slope to a rail line. On the other side, you kind of have a steep slope up, kind of like a cliff, vegetative area on this side. And to fit a trail there, our engineers took a look at it. It would require taking out the road and shifting it completely over. So once again, not technically impossible, but it doesn't meet our goals for implementations, right? Costs, very, very expensive, right? They're big barriers. So I don't want to say it was a fatal flaw, but it was something that was a red flag for us. So you can see the little line on the top. This route crossed out at this point, right? We looked at it. It was one of the routes that we did want to really seriously take. It was close to the river. It connected a lot of the downtowns. There was some important pieces of this route, but ultimately kind of had that implementation piece was very, very difficult to overcome. Next slide, please. So we'll shift to Route B here. This one starts the same as the first route, 95 into Browns Creek into the St. Croix Crossing Loop, but instead of continuing on that underneath 36, we're proposing a new trail connection here. And there is another image here and a couple slides that zooms in on this that you'll really be able to see this part really well. So put a pin in that just for now, but establishes a new connection from 95 up to the Beach Road crossing over 36 where there's an existing kind of trail that brings you across 36 there. And then ties into the Oak Park Heights trail system that maybe you guys are familiar with as well. Continuing that route south, it is Stagecoach instead of 95, so that's an existing county road. You follow Stagecoach all the way down to 94, long section, right? Once you get to 94, we had some conversations, exciting conversations with Bellwin Conservancy. they've been interested and thought about in the past about adding a paved trail to their network. Right now, all of their trails are soft surface trails. And a paved trail that would connect a lot of their properties, which they really kind of continuously own a lot of property from 94 all the way into like just north of downtown Afton.
Right.
A trail that would kind of meander through all those properties and bring you all the way down. Now, they wanted us to continue to explore that option. Didn't have a hard commitment for it, but was really interested in it, and their board's really interested in it. So this route kind of demonstrates or highlights that opportunity there to work with Bellwin on a new trail route that would kind of go through their property, which was really exciting. So that's kind of one of the highlights of this option here too. Next slide. So Route C really focused on where there are existing trails in the corridor and how can we best take advantage of those. Starts the same as the other trails do. Instead of establishing that new connection up to Beach Road, it continues underneath 36. It makes that connection there at 56th Street, for folks who may be familiar with that uphill up to Stagecoach from 95 there. Once again, that's an existing trail connection. Then it would hook into Stagecoach, and then we're talking about a new trail that brings you from Stagecoach continued south all the way down to 94. Now, instead of the Bellwin option, let's say that option is, we look into it because of cost, for funding, support, different reasons that's not able to come to fruition. We do have an existing trail that brings you from Afton to Lakeland, and that's what this purple line shows here. It's County Road 18 at that point. So it would connect, we'd have a trail that would connect just on the other side of 94, Stagecoach to County Road 18, St. Croix Trail. And so we designate that existing trail. So that's that purple line that you see. That brings you all the way down to downtown Afton. That's also that image there too.
Question, what's the timeline on this?
Depends on the option. Not soon is the best thing I can come up with. It's not in our 5-year capital plan right now.
So why are you not looking at the rail lines that go to the power plant, which is going to be gone in 2028?
Yeah, we did have conversations about the rail line. Our conversation with the rail line was that they will continue to serve customers on that rail line even after the King plant closes. They expect their traffic to go up even, as is what they shared with us. So at this point, they did not feel comfortable designating that as a future trail alignment. They expect to kind of own it into infinite future, like they have no timeline on when they would ever think about abandoning that rail line. But we did look into it.
Anderson uses.
Yep, Anderson especially, yep.
Plastic injection molded company.
Yeah, there you go.
Does this Route C then hook into the, I see you've got a picture there of the Afton Lakeland Trail. It hooks into that
It
trail?
is that trail.
Okay.
Yep, it is that trail. Basically, you're designating that existing trail as the regional trail. Yep, that's exactly what that is. All right. So the next image shows kind of the recommendation that came out of this process. This came out, the stakeholders of the city really looked at this as well, and this was the staff recommendation at this point. Due to challenges that we addressed with Route A, we begin to focus on B and C, like I mentioned. We believe that Route B best met the project goals and will set the vision for the future of this trail development. We also would like to designate Route C, which is as the interim route. So these dual designations that we can do, we can take advantage of both the existing trails that exist there today. We'll also plan for the future if the opportunities like Bellwin, for example, are able to come to fruition. So just to try to make it a little more clear, it would be the interim route until or while the county works on those other segments of trail that doesn't exist there today. And then once we were able to build those segments, if we are able to build those segments, the designation would then change to that long-term route, if that makes sense. Maybe that happens, maybe that never happens, and it's always the interim route.
And
But
what is the long term?
yeah, that's Route B. So that is the new Beach Road connection, just north of 36. Brings you into Stagecoach, and we'll walk through it in the next slide too. And then it's the Bellwin connection into downtown Afton.
And in your head, long range is how many years? Or
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not anywhere soon. I like to say these plans are 20 to 30-year plans.
Okay, that's good to know.
Now, if Bellwin gets super excited about this and they're able to bring funding, like there could be segments that get built soon, and there could be other segments that, like I said, are 30 years out.
And then you can learn from them.
Right, absolutely. Okay, the next slide really zooms in on the Oak Park Heights segments, and I think this is probably what most folks are interested in here. So once again, the purple route you see here, that's the long-range route. So just to walk us through that, the Bridgeview Park part of the St. Croix Crossing Loop Trail, that would be the existing trail. That would be designated as the route. And then it would cross 95 there, so that would be a new crossing. There is like a pedestrian ramp right there, and it's technically, even unmarked crossings are crossings. But it's the one that you probably would use if you wanted to use Lookout, the Lookout route. So putting a trail on that side of 95, and then you can, if you can see it on the yellow line in the image here, you can see how it kind of wraps around the storm pond that exists there today and brings you up to Beach Road. The idea there is that it's a gentler grade for folks as opposed to Lookout Trail. You're not sharing space with road traffic like you are at Lookout Trail, and you're providing access to all those neighborhoods up there right now. The best access they have to the St. Croix Crossing Loop Trail is either taking Lookout Trail if you're walking. It could be especially difficult with the grading there, or you go all the way into downtown Stillwater and take the stairs, or you come across 36 back to 95 and then under 36 in order to connect to that trail.
Yeah, you just come across Beach Road and hit the trail right. That's what
Right.
today.
Right. Yep. Which is what many people do, especially if they live really close to the 36. But for a lot of those neighborhoods back there, it wasn't some. What was exciting about this option is that they'd have a better connection, or they felt like a better connection.
So would this added thing, it's not going up Lookout?
No.
Where are you going to get gradual uptake from? Through the bluff line there?
Yeah, so we work closely. We don't have the contours there on this map, but
That's
it's
the bridge.
Yeah,
I know, that's just.
it isn't no grade, that's for sure. It is an up. Yeah, it's for sure an upgrade, or it is a grade, but it's a gentler grade than Lookout Trail, for example. Actually, significantly gentler than
Lookout's terrible.
Lookout Trail. Yeah,
Trust me.
that's what we heard from a lot of folks. Yeah.
Just connect up with the trail that's already going under to 36
Yeah,
and then
that's-
cutting over to Stagecoach now.
Yeah, so we'll continue to use that, and that's that interim regional designation route. So that will be the destination or the regional route until, if we ever are able to build that connection with, it'd be a collaboration with MnDOT, especially because that's all MnDOT land. That new connection gives us an option to build that connection too. But in the meantime, the route that you just explained there would be the regional route,
Yeah, that's-
and maybe for forever.
All the time.
Yeah, so I just wondered what's, so that, the number of people, because I live right down here, the number of people that, they come off all the time, they cross right over, they come out of those neighborhoods and they cross right over to Beach, and they go straight down, and we cross back over and head down. I just wonder if that'd be, if we can get more trail, and say like Chuck said, use that existing chunk, instead of as an interim.
Right. Yeah, and we can continue to use that, and that trail will go nowhere, right? I think the idea is exactly what you demonstrated. I think for some folks, that's great. I think for other folks, just crossing 36 and then waiting at those lights with the busy freight traffic, that's a difficult connection for them. For some folks, it's not a barrier, but for others, it's
have
something
the
that
same
makes things a little easier.
You still got to cross down here.
You have to cross 95, correct? Yeah. So one of the things we're suggesting in our master plan is to do some crossing improvements there. That intersection actually is built for a future signal, or is built to that standard for when they were able to. If MnDOT wanted to, they could plug in a light there. And then there's also some suggestions about lane reduction there to increase space for a median for a refuge for pedestrians to cross better there. So what I'm trying to say is there are a couple different improvements we can make to that crossing if this trail were to ever come to fruition.
You still have to cross the frontage road. When you come across, you come up and cross over on Beach. You're crossing on Beach, right? Or am I reading that wrong? With that new, it comes up through, the new purple line comes up
Oh, that's that.
to 36.
Beach is above it.
Here's Beach, isn't it?
It's above it. It's to the, that's just like the trail. This goes right below my house.
Yeah, it's Beach
Right
right
below my house
there.
between the pond.
That's the bridge,
My house
and
is
then
right
Beach
there.
goes up this way.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
Beach
So
is
they
the
want to
line
hook
right
in
here.
right here.
Right. Yep. Beach is that line.
Crossing
Yeah.
under,
No, they're crossing over.
Over.
Yeah.
On Beach.
on Beach. But yeah, then you get to the frontage road.
Yep.
You still have to cross the frontage road.
Yeah, well, the street.
The street, yeah.
Yeah. Where the
Yeah.
trail is on the other side of the street?
Yeah, so I
yep,
mean, so you're
yep,
still,
sure.
I'm saying, if you were saying, people don't want to come down and cross the street, but they still got to cross the street.
Right,
Somewhere.
somewhere, right. Agreed, agreed.
Okay, yeah, I thought, man, I'm lost somewhere here.
Yep.
We still got to cross the street to get
Yep,
here.
you do need to,
Well,
yep,
see, in
right, that's
North
good to
St.
know.
Paul, what they did is build that bridge.
Bridge, I was gonna-
Which, how long ago was that? At least 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was well over $1 million just to get over Century. It's also called Highway 120.
Yep.
Yeah, but you still get a lot of roads when you cross that way, so
Yeah.
that's
I was-
part of living on trail.
Right, it is. It is part of it.
So the other thing I want to point out on this map, and then we'll go to the other one too, is that the eyes on the map here, you might be like, what are those?
Yep.
So those are points of interest. So these are things where we could have opportunities for signs that will share about the history of the area, or maybe local businesses that are close to it, things like that, or maybe rules of the trail or trail etiquette signs, things like that. And then we also we threw some parking opportunities that exist within the corridor there too as well. So that's what the P stand there are, like parking or trailhead opportunities that exist within the corridor.
Is that the current parking that's there?
Yes,
Is that-
those are all current parkings. Yep, yep.
And restrooms.
All right, next slide is just now the part of Oak Park Heights south of 36 there. As you can see there, as the commissioner pointed out here, you're crossing that road there and connecting in with that existing trail. That brings you kind of past Valley View Park. It's where kind of Stagecoach, that County Road 23, the frontage road becomes County Road 21. And then from there, there's no existing trail on Stagecoach further south. So we are there proposing a new trail along Stagecoach for that segment, and that would bring you, you'd ride Stagecoach all the way down to 94.
That would be nice to have, because I see these people riding on Stagecoach. That scares the daylights out of
I was
them.
just down to Miller Farms today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that we've heard kind of uptick in traffic for that corridor as well. That kind of covers the Oak Park Heights section. I kind of gave some context on some of the other parts of the cities as well, but happy to go in more detail there as well.
One thing too that I'd like to suggest to you is, I know Washington County had one person involved with the Excel program, where there was 27 of us who met for once a month for over a year, studying what's going to happen to that section of land when Excel moves out. And of course, Parkland, especially on the northern section of that closest to the bridge, already has a deep pond that's a natural
Oh, cool.
facade, and it's so close to where now the trail does go across that bridge in the 5-mile section
Sure.
around. And so there again, we've got to keep remembering that's only 5 years away. That's a blink of an eye in what you're planning for this.
Yeah.
So I'll find out. I can't remember. Talked with that person, but I can't remember. There was 27 of us in that program.
Sure. Yeah, I'll connect with staff who were part of those meetings. They're on our team as well. Make sure that
Yeah, that's
I
cool.
take another look at that. I think one priority that the city has kind of shared throughout this, and a lot of the citizens I talked to too, would be great for this trail to connect to whatever happens there.
That's
And
right.
what's great is that that existing connection on 56th Street, kind of connects into that access road. So it will be a great amenity for folks if that were to develop.
Yeah.
As part of the county trail system, would the road crossings, would they be marked as crosswalks at all, painted or not?
It depends on we'd work with the agency on depending, like if it's a MnDOT road, we'd have to really work with MnDOT on what that crossing would look like. Yeah, but on the county side, when we have regional trail crossings, we try to make those as safe and as easy as possible because of the recreational aspect of our regional trails.
Yeah, 'cause that's, there's a couple spots where that could be helpful.
And the floodplains have to be looked at.
Yep, absolutely, yeah, yep. Okay, the last slide here, just kind of tease this up, and I'm happy to share, or to spend as long as you'd like on any questions or comments. But the goal here is to get some feedback, some input from you all, to review the project, and to hopefully tee this up to go in front of the city council at a future meeting. We're kind of continuing to finalize the plan details, kind of fine-tune things here and there. We're actually, drafting the full document. It's gonna be like 100 some pages, so I didn't want to, it's a lot for anybody to read at this point, but that's being drafted, and we'll continue to meet with city staff staff on this as well. And then in addition to this, I'm going to other cities within the corridor, having a similar conversation, similar presentation for them as well over the next couple months. We hope to have this in front of our county board with support from the local agencies here at the end of June or into July.
You mentioned earlier that it's not currently in the 5-year plan. Are you hoping to put it into that plan, or is it just into the 5 to 10-year plan?
Yeah, we wouldn't imagine inserting it into the existing 5-year plan.
Okay.
It would be that 5, 10, 15, 20, those types of
Okay.
timelines.
And you learn that from Met Council. They're always 10 years out.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Well, in the finances, if you get support from a city council, does that include, we're willing to buy into that 50% thing that you had mentioned at the beginning? Or does it mean, sounds like a good idea, keep looking? Or what does support mean at
Yeah,
that point?
thanks for that question. We're open for whatever support you're comfortable giving, we would be comfortable including in our plan. So if that's a condition that folks feel want to make sure they include in their resolution, you are free to do that, absolutely. Different cities along with different corridor have different comfortability on how much, what the resolution actually says, that type of thing. I will say no matter what happens out of this process, the county does a pre-designed process for all of our regional trails. So like I said, this is step 0. This is not even step 1. Step 1 would come when we have, some funds, not even to build it, but funds to study it further, to work through some of, the more details, engineering details, crossing treatments, things like that, to really iron out any other details. That would happen, and at that point, the county would re-engage the city and all of our local partners for whatever section we would be looking at.
Well, question on, by the St. Croix Bridge, that one new trail that you had coming up along, whatever that would be, through the MnDOT.
MnDOT, yep.
So if it's through MnDOT land, is that MnDOT, or is that considered an Oak Park Heights section?
Right. It's in Oak Park Heights technically. It's MnDOT land. What we'd be really looking for trails that, especially something like that, that's when we'd really look for those grant opportunities to help build those structures. Because it's not, our policy isn't super clear on trails that really veer off of same with the Bellwin section, right? Like they veer off of the county right-of-way or the city right-of-way like that. We would really be looking for those additional funding sources to build those segments in particular, because really right now our county policy doesn't do a great job of kind of addressing what the cost share policy looks like there. So
The
appreciate
same
that
thing
question.
as was if you take Stagecoach all the way out, that's along the county right-of-way.
Right, yeah. So our cost policy would apply to the Stagecoach section. So that's a great clarification, yeah.
How many other cities have you, where are we in the list of who you've talked to or done this with?
Right. Afton's city council resolution, I've already talked to their Parks Commission. That goes tomorrow. Stillwater was 2 weeks ago. Other agencies are just writing letters of support. That's possible. So Bellwin Conservancy is doing that. The Watershed District is doing that. Bayport got their resolution 2 weeks ago. And there are a couple more on the schedule in the next month or so. Gives you an idea. I'm getting a tour of Washington County through the project, which is fun.
That's very timely. I brought this along.
Oh, an article in the, great. Yeah,
Yes.
we did a press release for it. Yeah.
Yeah, Friday, May 5th Gazette.
Oh,
To
awesome.
anybody who hangs on to them for a little while.
Yeah.
It's a very good article
Oh,
for,
good.
in a very
Yeah.
limited space,
I
but that's
appreciate
why I
that.
brought it to say, what do we know about this? Here we are.
Right, great timing. I like when we can do that.
Any other questions?
Have you had any, how's the questions on going north of Stillwater when you depart from the Browns Creek to get
Yeah.
to the boom site? How's the land acquisition look there?
That section could be the most difficult in the entire segment.
That's what it looked like.
Similarly, like, I talked about when you get outside of Bayport, you had the guardrails, you had no room for a trail, you'd have to move the whole trail. That's kind of what we're looking at for that segment.
Yeah.
Luckily, that segment is shorter, but there's no other option. We looked at every option you could to get around it.
It's just snake.
And we just probably, at the end of the day, have to wait for that road to use its full usable life and have those conversations with MnDOT to reconstruct a road that could provide some more space. We also understand we'll probably have to compromise our standards right there, right? Like we might not be able to get that 10-foot wide
Yeah.
trail with the big green buffer, right? We're going to have a skinnier trail, unfortunately, for areas like that.
And as long as you warn your bikers and
Yeah.
walkers
Well-
before they get to somebody's deadline.
Yeah, I would think a lot of people will just continue on the Browns Creek, further west if they're kind of going on more of a recreational
Right.
ride and they have no need to actually go north if they don't want to. They'll have that choice too. Yeah, very difficult section, for sure.
Yeah, because trails go north of, through Stillwater along Stonebridge Trail and hit the highway and die.
Yep.
And you can't even connect onto the Browns Creek there either. So.
We're hoping to fix that, making that connection from Stonebridge down to the trail. Yeah, that is something we were at the state asking for money for a state
Good,
pond.
that's good.
Yeah.
I used to
That's
live
on
right
our-
there and have to carry my bike down.
Yep,
that
I do
hillside.
too. Yep, that's on our radar.
Well, you go down the bridge and underneath.
It's not a safe, it's not a safe way to do it. I don't even know if it's
Kids and
legal.
graffiti writers down
Well,
there.
we've got trails, and this is back, I'll bet, almost 20 years ago right now, from the cities all the way to Duluth. Because I rode them on rollerblades
Wow.
like 3 years in a row before MS, I think it was. And it took us 2 days, but they were already there, and now we expect so much more of our trails because they were just little asphalt paths right through towns and everything, the old railroad lines. And so I know it can be done because that was a long way. That was over 75 miles.
That's impressive, yeah. It starts with these plans, right? This is the first step in order to create those systems, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for all the
It's doable.
information.
It's doable, Connor.
Yeah, well, appreciate your enthusiasm.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And maybe Jennifer can tell us what we've got to do now as a Parks Commission.
Sure, yes. Chair and members of the commission. Ultimately, what Connor mentioned earlier is that they ultimately are looking for a resolution of support from the city council. Staff has reviewed this plan. Generally, staff thinks it's a great idea. Of course, we have concerns about the cost share policy that Washington County has put forward. And as Connor had mentioned, the resolution can be drafted in any such a way if the Parks and Trails Commission feels that this is a good plan, could recommend to the council to draft that resolution, and the council could consider, how the wording of that resolution. If you need more time and you have more questions, we can certainly put a work session on the agenda for next month and look into this further before any recommendation is made. It's completely up to the Parks and Trails Commission.
Park members, do you have any comments?
Do we know?
Thoughts?
Do we know how many miles this proposed purple line is? Is Oak Park Heights?
Oh, just Oak Park Loop. I mean, it's in the plan, I don't know off the top of my head. It's a 14-mile stretch all the way.
Okay, well, I was thinking about cost and if it's in our territory, how many miles are ours? Okay.
Or would be how many miles are not already built in Oak Park Heights.
Right, yes, yeah,
And I can get that number to staff.
okay.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Are we supportive? Do we not supportive? Supportive?
Yes. Very
Judith?
supportive.
I'm supportive.
Supportive?
Supportive of, yeah, as long as it keeps, but it all depends on costs and
Of course,
what
all
we
those,
should, yeah,
the tangibles,
yeah,
what it comes down to, but
the concept.
the spirit of it and the concept, I think, it's going to happen anyway. I think more and more people are using even our little section of the trails every year.
Our trails are packed constantly.
They are.
And the maintenance, I know that Mr. Doherty has been on me about getting a trail maintenance plan put together, which we're working on. We'll have that soon. But I know that we have millions of dollars worth of maintenance to do on our 8-mile stretch of trail here in the city. That's just the trail that we own. That doesn't include the maintenance that we do on county trails that they don't do. It is a great concept, but.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it is a great concept, but. 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 You know, it We have a lot of trails here in Oak Park Heights that we have to pay for.
I just think it's
So-
gonna be too expensive. I think it's gonna be expensive
Yeah.
in ways we don't even know. And our regular trails that I walk on every day that need maintenance, that bridge going over that Peril Pond needs maintenance.
Yes, ma'am, it does.
And
Yeah.
especially with how bad the water was this spring.
Yep.
And I think that this route that goes right underneath my house is not the greatest. And I think you could have, instead of crossing 95, you could go further down, go under the bridge, and then go up by the backside of the prison there and get to Stagecoach.
It already exists. That's why it's kind of
Yeah,
a
I don't
combination
understand
of
it.
the
It's-
concept of,
yeah.
well, that's what I said, it was like that part of, if we don't have to build that part, it's already, you can come up to the existing spot, or like say, come up all the way down to the bottom. As I stop there by the Dow plant all the time and press the button.
But the reason that you decided to do that is for access, correct?
Yeah, that folks can continue to use that connection, right? By adding that connection, we're providing better access for those, especially for those folks there that would reduce the amount of crossings they'd have to take and additional mileage. It also create additional loop potential as well. So you have an additional section.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a nice amenity if you, but it's also probably a very costly amenity compared to.
Who would be filling out grants for this?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It depends on who, both is the main question. The county would take leadership in as many grants as possible. There are certain grants that counties are not eligible for, but cities are, in which case we would work collaboratively with city staff if that were the case. The county takes the lead on regional trail grants and applications.
Well, and we have to remember that not everyone who would put their bike down on one end of your dream, of these maps, is going to do the whole route. So it might take some of the pressure off of our 8 miles of trails that we have that circle just in an oval, in a sense, away around our town.
How much control would the city have in the final plan, in the decision, if the council opted to say, yes, we'd like to participate in this, but we would prefer to use the interim trail and not do that? Does the city have that power to control of the design of the trail? Or does, if they're in, you guys say, we're building that new section?
Well, for all of our projects, we work closely with cities, right? I think it would depend on what happens in the preliminary design process.
Okay.
I will say, we don't have support for the local cities. Typically, it's difficult for us to go for applications that require that local support. So, by nature of not being able to apply those additional funding sources, it'd be difficult for the county to pursue if the city qualified their support in that way.
Right, or if that's all MnDOT land and MnDOT pays for that trail connection. Dennis?
Yeah, I think I know nothing about the finances for what you're considering here. I think grants are a great idea, obviously, anytime you can apply, even if, whether you get them or not. But to me, this is about do we support the spirit of what's being put forward? And I hear you say, no, you didn't, but 4 of us did. Do we move that forward then that way? Chuck's here, he can tell the council, the commission was split on supporting it or not supporting it, or?
With concerns,
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
Well, I think that was good. I mean, I don't think you're going to see the council go for a resolution that basically says we're going to open up our checkbook and do it.
Right.
I think support and concept is probably something that we could do at this point.
Sure.
Because we don't know what dollar amount we're even talking about.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we need a resolution, or how do we do that?
It would just be a motion recommending to the city council a resolution of support.
In the most general terms. How's that?
Yeah, a motion of support. Yeah.
This is the dream at this point.
Well, I'll make a motion that we support the a recommendation that goes to our city council for the regional trail master plan that has been offered this evening.
And I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, so it passes on a 4-1 vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Connor.
Yeah, thank you.
Our annual meeting of the Parks Commission, election of officers. Jennifer, you want to take that?
Yes, Chair and members of the commission. Each year, the Parks and Trails Commission must, under the bylaws, hold an annual meeting to elect our chairperson and our vice chairperson. We did not do this in 2022 because we didn't have a full board, so we opted to postpone to this year until we have a full board, and here we are with 5 members of the commission. As you know, Commissioner Shearhart has been our chairperson. She has been in this position for the maximum number of years that are allowed under the bylaws, so she did a fantastic job but can no longer be nominated to serve as chairperson. Your vice chairperson has left the commission, so that seat is vacant anyway. So today what we're looking for is a motion selecting your new chairperson for the next 2-year term and your new vice chairperson for the next 2-year term. So that is what we, 2 separate motions, please.
I'd like to make a motion that Chairperson George Hefner has done a wonderful job of backing me up in this time frame, and he's so much better at it than I ever was. And so I would like to nominate him to be the new chair officially.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other nominations? I guess all in favor?
If anybody's listening out there, my health has really been sort of shaky these last months, and George has been just wonderful about taking over and just moving ahead with it and giving me more of the ability to be here and at least be voting without having the pressure of running the meeting too. So I'm so appreciative of how well he's done.
Thank you. We need to elect a vice chair. I'll open the floor for nominations.
I nominate Tom Theets.
Well, I'll be missing some at the June meeting. I'll be gone. Just let you know, because with work, but
I'll second that.
All right.
Second that.
Any other nominations?
George, we need stronger, well, we need stronger people on this end of the table.
All those in favor of the vice chair being Tom Theets going forward, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, you can't. All right.
Ready to vote? And we're okay, yeah, I mean,
So now, according to the notes that you sent out, Jennifer, newly elected officers and members take over in January. So should we do this again in January? Get back on
We should.
track? Okay. All right, so we'll hold office until January and see what happens then.
We'll get a strong consortium.
This is your trial period.
Yeah, trial, there you go.
I was trying to avoid that word.
A couple pieces of information. The next meeting for us is Monday, June 19th at 5:30. And the next upcoming council meeting, Tuesday, May 23rd at 6 o'clock. Anything else?
Commission Chair and members of the commission, just one last thing. Earlier in the meeting, someone had inquired about the annual walkthrough for the parks.
Yes.
And so in previous years, it's been tough to find a date that we could all meet. And so the idea was that everyone walk the parks on their own possibly and just give feedback to staff. If that's not desirable, we can certainly try to set a date that most or all of us could meet and do a walkthrough together.
What would we put our eyes on when we walk the park?
So, the walkthroughs generally, minor maintenance things are things we don't have to pay attention to. Those are things that our Public Works Department is aware of and they're working on. it would just be major infrastructure capital projects that you think our city could benefit from.
A couple of years back, Andy gave us sheets to fill out when we did
Were they?
it was at the start of COVID, I think it was, and when we didn't even want to huddle at the fountains or something like that.
Yeah.
The
I'd
master
look for those.
plan.
I'm sure they're in my files. I could probably find them
Yeah,
and recreate them.
because those are very helpful. I know, just went at my own speed then, you know, and certainly if you know.
That'd be helpful,
John, but if you're new to it and want to hook up with somebody else
Sure.
for even parts of it, the trails, because I did it over a couple of days, you know, even not trying to get all of our parks in one time. After a while, it all starts running together and you're happy, you know.
I think that's the problem when we try to schedule a time that most of us can be here. Then it's usually before a meeting, and we have to rush through, and it just gets like to be
It
a long
does.
thing.
I think it'd be more beneficial to walk through as we each have time.
Yes, and yeah, Commissioner Seeds, you weren't available last time,
Right,
so
I
you,
did-
I
I did
remember
it-
you
I did it
sent,
separately,
you
yeah.
did it on your own, and you
did
sent in
on
a
your
nice list for us, and I just think that might be a little bit more valuable. And, you know, Andy can provide you with some things to look out for and
As
things you
is
can
there anything
ignore
you guys
and
would like us
stuff.
to look for specifically?
Yeah.
Like Jennifer said, ultimately, it's what your vision is of these parks. And now, we do have, our parks are in pretty decent condition. We spent a lot of money over the years replacing playground equipment, so, but keep an eye out for things that you think you might want to improve or add or even change or take away. We know things like Autumn Hills, the playground equipment at Autumn Hills is gonna be due for replacement in, say, 5+ years, whatever that might be, but we're aware of that stuff. But what we don't know is what you folks see for, this is your community, what do you see for the parks? What do you want the parks to be? That's what we're looking for.
You had made an editorial comment, I think, on something that you sent out last time, that it was meant to be a vision for the future, not necessarily just
Gum
there's a
wrappers
crack
here,
in the
broken.
sidewalk or, you know.
We know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, right, that's what we're looking for.
Okay. Should we aim to have that completed by Monday, June 19th? Is that
I
going to be a
think that's
problem?
reasonable, a request a month out.
Give it a shot.
Okay,
That
can we
works.
put that on the agenda? And
Yeah, so we're looking for opportunities maybe that we're missing, or singing something, you know,
No.
Maybe
Well,
it's-
we know how busy you guys are, but even if we can make our own notes and even call you before the meeting and say, I just didn't understand this situation I came across, or
Yeah.
whatever. As long as we feel open to do that,
yeah.
I think it can work. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's not to say if there's something that you feel that really needs to be done that is a maintenance item, add it, let me know.
Right.
You know, don't
Right.
hesitate.
Yeah, it's a lot of acreage for the size of our overall town. We should be, you know, very proud of that.
Yeah.
But it's just that much work.
Yeah.
I guess one question on trails, and you're gonna love this. Would it be possible if, I know we can't get everything fixed right now, but like if we could go, can we mark some of the divots, the potholes that are like where it's sunken in, like just spray it with high-vis yellow paint or something?
White paint. but
Or
yes,
white?
Yeah, use white.
Is that okay?
Well,
for-
let me know if you do that, so I can let the crew know, because
Okay.
you're going to do it.
Yeah, that's all, yeah, that's what I'm saying, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's like, when you come down, like, when you come from, down the trail towards the causeway.
Yep.
There's some, because of this, the underground water system there's some sunken parts of the trail, and if it's,
Yeah.
people are, I saw one little kid flip on his bike, because it just,
Yeah.
it's a sudden dip in the blacktop, it's not really visible.
you don't even have to wait for these things, just let me know, and we'll correct them. But yeah,
Yeah, okay.
those sort of things are absolutely acceptable.
Okay, I wanted to ask you for it.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I will most likely miss the 19th meeting. I'll try to get back from Mountain View.
Okay, move to adjourn.
We are,
Good job.
good job, my friend.
All right.
Hour and a half, holy cow.
So you're gonna send us fill out, or?
Yeah,